I'd like to welcome everyone to the podcast. This is Mike from Jeff Fresh Flowers. I'm here with Ryan and Joelle. Mimi is off today, and today is um, a difficult one. It's a difficult one. Today we're going to replay a podcast recorded. What was the date we recorded that, Ryan? Do you know?
That was episode 142. Yeah, November 22nd, 2024. Episode 142.
142 with the great Frank Biddle, who sadly passed away last week. He was struggling for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I can't tell you for how many years, but for decades, I heard the name Frank Biddle, Never got to meet him until a couple years ago when Casey and I were in San Diego, and Frank and his son George invited us to come to their property, one of their farms, which was all the way up on top of this really cool mountain. As soon as I laid eyes on him, I was like, whoa, this guy is the real deal. You know, you could just tell he was full of confidence, just knew everything. He knew everybody. And he's a guy like you want to know. And then I got to meet him a couple other times at shows. And then one time he invited me and Ryan to a beautiful beach house that they had a little paella party there. And I had met his wife a few times at shows when Frank wasn't doing shows. She was doing them and kind of filling in, and she did a great job.
Mm-hmm.
Her nickname is the Badger, which I always thought was.
That's a fun one. Yeah, that's how they all refer to her there. Yeah, exactly.
Everybody calls her the Badger. But she just seems to be a really cool person, and I'm really glad that I got to meet them, and I met, and George, and I think your brother Casey and George have developed a nice relationship over time.
Yeah, definitely.
And I just thought it's one of those people that you wish you would have known,
right? More time with him
or got to know. Yeah. I think there was a lot to learn from him.
100%. He lived a life.
A guy like me, and for sure, I could have learned a lot from somebody like that if I would have ever had the opportunity to be closer. We used to text a little bit of stuff back and forth. He told me he was a big hockey fan, and he knows our family all plays hockey and stuff. So I kind of would send him funny things I saw about hockey or something like that on text message. We had a few back and forth, but. No, he's one of those people that deserves celebrating.
Yeah,
I think
for sure.
And I understand that there is going to be a celebration of life for him coming up in July sometime.
We'll find out and get the right information.
But
that's amazing. How they should definitely celebrate special. They should celebrate that life for sure.
Yeah. I mean, just a few stories he told us, man. He's so funny.
Amazing stories.
Interesting.
Yeah, you're going to hear him. If you didn't hear him the first time around, when we replay this episode, you'll definitely hear a lot of the things that really just, made him who he was. Really,
and he's self-made.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's something about people that are just self-made. Some people started with zero, and built.
To stay humble.
Only by circumstance got into the business. It wasn't his focus and direction. He just kind of fell into it, and he realized he was really good at it. And then he evolved into all these different businesses. And from what I was reading, he was very involved in Cal Flowers for a long time and a lot of stuff. Could have learned a lot from him.
Yeah, he was a past president, a board member, Cal Flowers. He was involved in a lot of different organizations throughout the flower industry. He made a big stamp on the industry. Now his family is there to continue his legacy, which is amazing. And George said something really cool to Casey that Casey told me, and they said it was okay that we could share this. But George said that their family actually re-listened to their podcast episode with Frank, the same episode that we're going to share today, that the family listened to it internally just to hear his voice, just to kind of hear some of his stories. and some of the relatives were not even familiar with how he started and as much as he did in his life. So
Wow.
it was really really sweet to hear George say that the podcast actually did something good and
That's awesome. No,
provided a little
that's
bit
great to
of
hear. Yeah. I can see it like how you kind of like all sitting around and, getting through this shit ain't easy, man.
no,
When you lose somebody that like, in your family that's your mom, your dad, your sis. I mean, it's not easy. And the closer you are, the harder it is. And I could imagine them just, turning it on and kind of like listening to the stories, the guy with the fax machine and stuff, like listen
yeah,
to those
yeah, yeah,
stories. It
yeah,
just, you gotta laugh. You just can't be sad at that moment. You just gotta laugh. Like, that's my dad, man. That was my dad. That's my husband. That's my brother. That's my sister. That's my cousin. That's somebody who just has stories for days,
yeah,
just funny stories.
yeah.
I love that. I love that.
This episode that we're about to reshare, like we said, this is in memory of Frank Biddle. We are, you guys, your family is in our thoughts and our prayers, and we hope you guys get through this tough time together. We got you in case you need anything.
And George, I guess, is just going to continue to build the company and take over, and they absolutely need everyone's support.
Yeah, George
And
and the Badger. Yeah,
yeah, and so they can count on us and our support. We're customers, we're friends, and I really like it that Casey and George are very close in age, and
mm-hmm.
they both have similar. One's a buyer, one's a seller, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah, yeah.
it's a fun relationship for the two of them.
But their whole family is good people. You can definitely, they're
Yeah.
easy to get along with.
Well, if you read on the social media and stuff, I mean, people had a lot of really interesting things to say about him and experiences that they've had with him, and he was a good friend to a lot of people. You don't realize how many people, like in this industry, in the flower industry specifically, how many people you come across that actually, you know,
You impact their life.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Could
I
be
mean,
good, could be
we're in
bad, but
the
you're 100%. You're impacting people's lives in this industry. It's so personal.
yeah,
It's so family oriented. It's so communication based. It's who
yeah,
you know. It's what connections and relationships you build. And some of these people, they have lifelong friendships, more than families.
yeah. My dad, your grandfather passed away in 2001, I believe 2001, and even to now, every so often I come across somebody who knew him,
Yeah,
and it kind of lights me up. It kind of just makes me realize that I guess my grandfather did it to my father, and my father passed away, and after my grandfather passed away, my father must have had the same thing about his father. Is what I'm saying. And now, even 25 years later, my father passed away, and people are still telling me what a great person he was, or deals or business things that they had with him, or stories, funny stories that went on between them and him, and that always kind of like makes me, I don't know, it just kind of like makes me think a lot about him and how he impacted so many people.
yeah,
And I guess Frank's family right now is going to start, if they haven't already, they will start hearing that for the next 25 years as well,
for sure,
because
for sure.
that's what happens.
Yeah.
They leave a lot of impression behind.
It's also a matter of
Good.
showing respect for him. Like
Yeah.
keeping the legacy alive.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I don't ever have a lot to say about these kind of things.
Yeah, these are.
Other than all I can say from my side, I wish I'd have met him a lot sooner, and I wish that I would have got to know him better, because unfortunately, I did not have that opportunity.
Same. Same here. So
But when we were out there in California at that beach house, he took his time to talk with me. Just he had people, very important people all around, and he took his time to talk to me, to talk to you, and
definitely,
it's
definitely. Yeah.
that was cool. It was really cool.
You can like kind of sense certain people, their energy and stuff like that. Like when they talk to you,
Yeah,
like if they're legit, if they're sincere with what they're saying, and
yeah,
if they're in a rush to get out of the conversation, or if they're engaged and they're actually trying to build a connection and learn from you as well. And he was definitely one of those people.
yeah. I felt that for sure. I just can't get. I'll never forget when we went to the top of the mountain, to their farm on top of the mountain. And that was my first trip to San Diego.
Mm-hmm.
I've been in the flower business 45 years. I'd never been to San Diego before that. And we went up on top of this mountain, and he just like steps out on this rock, like on a cliff. It looks like the rock could have like dislodged itself from the mountain and just fell down. But he went out there fearlessly, just stood
Mm-hmm.
out there on this rock on this like, and he was describing how the workers, how they have to like
Repel.
rappel to get the wax flower and shit cut. And he's just out there on this rock. And I'm thinking to myself, shit, man, he needs to come back off that rock. I'm thinking to myself, like, that is not good. Get off the rock, get off the rock. Because I don't like heights to begin with. But he had no fear. He was just standing out there, just describing it like it was nothing.
From the
And he was
stories,
driving
the stories he was telling us, that's nothing. That was,
Yeah,
that's just, a
yeah,
pebble in the water.
yeah. Well, try to get me out on that rock. It won't happen.
That's funny.
It would not happen. Anyway, that was a great trip.
Great trip, great family, great
Yeah.
guy.
Yeah. So I guess we
This will
play
be,
the episode now?
we'll play the episode. This is in Frank's honor to remember him, to remember his story, to share his story, share his family's, their background, and just to learn a little bit more about Frank in his honor.
Yeah, this is a post that I read. Chris Drummond wrote this Facebook post. It has a picture of Frank driving a sailboat, and it says, "I feel a piece of me was ripped away today. We honor and remember a truly remarkable friend, Frank Biddle, who embodied the characteristics we admire: friendly, loyal, caring, funny, trustworthy, generous, thoughtful, adventurous, talented, strong, courageous, and extremely intelligent. If I was ever in need, Frank would give me the cash in his pocket, clothes off his back, a delicious meal, a warm bed. He connected people in amazing and life-changing ways. Frank motivated and inspired me every time we were together. Love and prayers for Jennifer and the entire Biddle family." I read a few different posts on social media, but that one was
Yeah,
just so good. I mean, Chris Drummond he's just
it's another
great with
stand-up guy.
words.
It's another stand-up
Yeah,
guy. That's another
yeah,
person that I just
yeah,
like as described. Like when you're talking to them that they're sincere, that they're honest, that they're trustworthy.
yeah. But it's not too common when somebody passes away that somebody like this is like the perfect person. I mean, they're
Right.
the way it's described. I mean, it's just amazing, and that's a real friend, and you could read the pain
Yeah.
in every word,
Yeah.
and it made me like Frank even more, even though
Right.
it's from this.
Right.
It made me say to myself, at least I'm a good judge of character,
That's
because I kind of like felt
exactly
it
right.
in the
Exactly.
beginning,
Yep. Yep.
But I mean, yeah, I have a lot of respect for Chris Drummond, and for him to write that was cool. And there's others, I mean, we could search for more, but I think it's more important we play the episode and let people hear for themselves if they haven't heard it,
Right. I agree with you.
or let them hear it again. Let them hear it again.
Listen to it again. Yeah.
And,
Make sure his
maybe they'll get a
stories
memory.
make sure his stories
Yeah.
stick. His legacy will live on.
Yeah.
So this is
Yeah.
in their honor for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you guys for listening. Please enjoy this. We'll see you next time.
I'm Fern. We got Mimi on the ones and twos today. No Joel. We got Ryan in house. Mike is actually in house right now. His time at the lake is running out, ladies and gents.
It's like you catch him on a breeze when he comes through on a travel, and then he's
It's
gone.
just a quick stop. He'll be gone tomorrow. It's crazy. But our awesome man of many talents, one of the hardest working people I know, guest today is none other than Frank Biddle, owner and president of FBI Flowers, owner and president of Tradewinds.
Damn.
Hello.
Oh, for two, Mimi.
Oh,
There you go.
Frank, can you hear that applause? Can you hear that applause? You missed all the things that Mimi pressed.
I missed all the applause. Yeah.
Oh, don't worry. We got to keep that in editing. We got to keep that. Oh, my. Welcome, Frank. How you doing today?
I'm great today. How are you guys doing?
Fantastic. Fantastic. How's it going out on your coast?
You know, it's nice. We finally had a little bit of break in the weather where it's dropping into I think we're getting the highs in the 60s today, which is
Nice.
a welcome because we've had a rather warm part of the fall, which is, we try to get a lot of planting and stuff done. And if it gets too hot, baby plants don't do so well in that type of situation. So
Don't worry.
I think it's finally made the change.
All right, Frank, we have a lot to get into today.
Brian's going to Japan.
Vacation, just simply for fun.
Mostly.
Workcation.
95% so.
He's got to work a little bit, but
We ship flowers every week to Japan, and the buyer of this company in Japan is called Ancorp. I met him in outside of Medellin. I met him in La Ceja, and I could see he was kind of gimpy over, and you could just see that his back hurt. So I touched his back. I said, "Is this where it's kind of locking up on you?" And he said, "Yeah, that's it." I showed him some stretches, some exercises. And I ran into him again 2 years later, I think in Bogota. And he said, "Do you remember me?" And I said, yeah, I met you in La Ceja. And he said, your exercises totally helped me unlock this bad back. And we became buddies ever since. And so we ship him flowers every week. And I keep telling him that one of these days we're going to make it over there for one of the grand sumo tournaments. I would love to see it.
Oh, that's what Ryan wants to go
sumo.
do. Yeah.
They don't have any
just,
like official tournaments or anything when I'm going, but there's like a touristy trap kind of dinner scenario where you can watch like two of them kind of go at it while you're eating dinner. So
Go at it, yeah.
It's like medieval times.
it's like that. It's kind of like that. Yeah.
Sumo times.
They do it every quarter. They do the big tournaments. And it's like January. It's every quarter starting in January.
Okay. Good to know.
And it's definitely on my bucket list. I want to check that out. I used to have for my kids when they were little, for birthday parties, we would set up sumo tournaments for the kids, which they love. Some of them didn't like it as much as others, but my kids loved
I
it.
had mini boxing gloves for mine. That was fun.
It is such a trippy sport. These guys that just sit around and eat and drink beer and sleep and do kind of odd looking exercises and then go out and just pummel. I mean, when they go at it, they beat the bejesus out of each other. They're brutal. They come across with these big old bear claws and smack each other. And
Yeah, they slap
When they
each
get-
other in the chest, right?
give each
When
other
they start
wedgies.
off.
or they can come to the head too. They can come up to the head, and it can be quite brutal.
I'm still stuck on the exercises. We're going to have a recording. You have to send it to me because me, Mike, a bunch of us have bad backs. So I want to see these exercises.
That's all just stretches. Yeah, no, I'll show you. It's pretty basic. It's basically, if you unlock your quads, if you can keep your quads loose and your hamstrings, your back will follow.
Yeah. That's the move.
Interesting.
And I always
And
know
just
when
you
I
have
have
to
back
do it
pain, my
regularly.
hamstrings are all tight.
You gotta
For
stretch.
sure.
That's what.
Yeah.
I think most everybody in the flower business has back pain.
It's
It's
desk
stress
jobs.
related also. It's
Yeah.
absolutely stress related.
It's stress
You're on
activated.
your phone and computer all day. You're hunched over,
Yeah.
hooked over the whole
Then you
day.
pick
But
picking
even
up
before they
stuff.
invented computers, there was back pain.
Well, I mean,
I also think it's just
flower boxes have only gotten smaller. When you guys were, you guys were growing up, there were full boxes of flowers you were carrying. Imagine a full box of carnations.
Yikes,
Good
no.
Lord.
I mean, the
Yeah,
half
no.
boxes of carnations are still pretty heavy.
Still pretty heavy.
They got
Listen,
A large California box now is 40, 16, 8, and they used to be 48, 20, 12,
yeah.
Good Lord.
and they were heavy.
The best
There was-
ones
there
were
was
the ones
once-
made of styrofoam because we used to take it to the beach also.
there. You go.
Is it a cooler box?
The cooler ones, they're the size of this table, Ryan. This is styrofoam.
That's pretty.
wow,
cool.
you would take
Molded
that to the beach.
styrofoam. They ship the roses in them.
So, hold on. We got to go back. Frank, how you doing? How's it going? We just keep
I
talking
can-
here.
I know. Yeah.
We're supposed to
certainly
start with
can't
like
complain.
5 minutes of banter. We did maybe
Yeah,
25
sorry.
minutes.
25. So
I've been
sorry.
here for a while.
So Frank,
Well.
you're running 2 major companies right now. You got family involved. Your son's been growing and learning everywhere.
Yep.
Awesome to see
Got my
him.
wife involved.
And his wife.
I have one
Your
son
wife,
involved.
got your wife. I
Saw
saw
her
you
in
guys.
Ecuador.
Saw her in Ecuador. So talk to us. Before you got to where you were right now, how did you start? Where did you come from?
How did I start? I grew up in, I was born in central Pennsylvania in the middle of nowhere, near like between Altoona and State College. So, I mean, if you name 2 cities of 30,000 people as the big cities, that's where we were between them. There was a town called Huntington, Pennsylvania. It was the county seat, and it had a population of about 5,500 people. That was the county seat.
That's out west.
And it's basically right in the middle of the state, right on a big, beautiful lake, Gracetown Lake. So it was a nice area. And when my parents got divorced, I moved with my mother to the Philly area and kind of grew up there, but then came back to central Pennsylvania for college, Juniata College, a little teeny Division III liberal arts school. And the beauty of that school was that they really gave you a lot of flexibility in your curriculum, your path towards what they called a program of emphasis. And so, I started off as sort of a business student, but then the opportunity came in my junior year to spend it abroad. So I did my whole junior year in Barcelona. And then my senior year, I opted to stay in Europe and went to Germany, outside of Frankfurt, in a town called Neu-Isenburg.
Nice.
I essentially came back and graduated with a degree, I think we called it International Studies, with an emphasis in 2 languages. And here I am in central Pennsylvania speaking German and Spanish and no one with whom to speak it, right? So I was always in the water. I was always aquatic in nature. So I did water skiing all day, every day. And I opted to move to California to take up surfing. I'm like, well, what am I going to do? My dad was in the newspaper business. He had a small paper in the town. It was a daily. So I went to work for him briefly in the advertising department. And I started at, if I'm not mistaken, it was like $3.50 an hour, roughly. It was minimum wage coming out of college, right? So that got old quick. And I just said, let's go to California, learn to surf, speak Spanish, find something to do. And I moved out to California. That was late 87, early 88, I believe. Fell in with a buddy of mine that was starting a flower business, bringing mainly stock, but also status, larkspur out of Baja, out of San Quintin, Baja. And the company that was growing this stock and stuff it wasn't us cultivating it. It was a company that was growing it for seed. It was called pedo seed, which was part of ball seed at the time. And so you needed to get the doubles of the stock picked out to keep it from cross-pollinating and causing problems in your seed stock. So we took all the doubles and put them on a truck, shipped them to California. And
Were those the first flowers to come out of Baja, Frank?
if not the first, they were, I don't know anybody who was ahead of us. Let's put it that way. The guys that are in Baja now were not around when we were doing it. And San Quintin was a really cool spot. You could bring your dirt bike down there. There was a little runway on the farm we could fly into and out. And so it was fun and convenient. And here we are, we're 24, 23, 24 years old and having a good old time surfing and dirt biking and bringing in flowers out of Mexico. Yeah, it was a hoot. So we brought that up, and I didn't know anything about flowers. If you gave me a bunch of stock and a bunch of carnations, I probably could have picked out a rose if you said to me which was a rose, but I didn't know anything about flowers. But I knew that if there's a demand for it, that all you got to do is pick up the phone and call people that theoretically buy it, and I'd just check out, obviously pre-internet days, and we would just call people in Atlanta, people in New York, people wherever, and say, hey, I have stock. Do you guys sell stock? Yes. cool. Let's make a deal.
How did you used to
And,
get those numbers back then? Was there like a
Well,
directory?
when I
mean-
would go on the road, I would go to all the yellow, to a phone booth and just yank the wholesale florist pages out of the phone booth.
That's right.
And I would ask friends to do that. They would pull the yellow pages out and then mail it to me
Oh,
pre-fax.
shit.
I remember the first time I saw a fax machine, how amazing
Yeah.
that was. That was just technology gone wild. So yeah, and so we would just pack up the flowers and ship them out, drive them down to the airport, drive them over to. Before Armelini was actually doing in California, there was a company called Frank's Trucking, and I think Armelini acquired them. And Wilsey Bennett was
Wilsey
kind of the
Bennett.
predecessor to Prime.
Yeah.
Wilsey Bennett was also into foods and like institutional foods. You could buy giant vats of Wilsey Bennett mayonnaise type stuff, but they did flowers as well. And Jessup was going back then as well. I remember once we had a truck full of stock and the market just died at one point, and we just had, I don't know, multiple semis of stock that had piled up, and we had a vacant lot right next to our warehouse that's now a luxury hotel in Carlsbad. And we took all this stock and just put it out there in this field to decompose. And it started kind of steaming. It got really, really hot. And the fire department came over and gave us hell for it.
Wow. Back then,
Days
they
when
used to
you
ship the
almost burned
stock in
Cali
Larkspur
down.
in giant, full boxes. California.
48 by 20 by 12.
Giant boxes. And they used to have a drayage company take the flowers to Los Angeles and fly it on a special consolidations going to different cities at discounted rates.
Yeah,
So
the New York console was the Metro consolidation.
Yeah. Back then, it was the D&J consolidation. Remember the D&J consolidation? He was
Yeah.
the guy who went to the airport and picked up everybody's flowers.
Yeah. So yeah, and it was fun back in the days. It wasn't much. Wasn't a lot of structure, and you would call somebody up, and if you misshipped something, they wanted a bunch of white stock, and they ended up getting pink and purple stock instead. They'd say, "Don't worry, I'll move it," and it was just a lot more freewheeling to the.
Were you selling for prices, or were you sending product?
Yeah,
on
no, we
consignment?
didn't do any consignment. We everything was based on fixed pricing.
But you hear what he
I think
said?
maybe.
That people said, "Okay, I'll sell it.
Yeah.
I'll work it."
through
Because
it.
there
I'll work
wasn't
through it.
Yeah.
there wasn't Pinterest or people demanding certain colors or Instagram or people
Yeah.
Now,
they'd
if
come
you
in
do
and
that
take
to
what they had.
anyone, we'd be dead to them. But just
Yeah.
like you ruined my life.
me. You
I hate
ruined
you.
me. I hate you.
People take it so personally now when mistakes happen.
Yeah, no, it was.
I remember the old days when it was okay. We're all gonna.
Yeah, I
survive.
remember once I was taking a load of boxes, and again, they were those massive boxes. 48 by 20 by 12 was, I don't know what that cube's out to, but probably 6.5 or some odd cubes, maybe 7 cubes, and they were heavy.
Yeah.
And I was driving this thing. We had this 1-ton Toyota stake bed truck. So we didn't even have a box truck or refrigeration or anything. And I was driving a bunch of boxes to the airport, San Diego, to ship off, and not properly tied down, and probably exceeding the speed. And a bunch of them just started flying out of the truck into right in the middle of the lanes of I-5.
Oh, yeah.
right?
Snowing
So,
flowers.
And so I get out, I stop the truck, and I would run out into the lanes of traffic on the 5, grab a box, get it back to the side. And I had to do it like 12 times to get these boxes out of the freeway,
Oh shit!
and then put them on the plane and ship them to New York or wherever.
No claims. No claims.
Don't worry,
Yeah.
he'll work.
What do you
through
mean
it.
they're a little
Don't
brown?
worry, we'll move it.
There's
Don't
tire
move it.
marks on my box.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
don't
don't know
worry, we
what's
don't
with
charge
these
extra
stock,
for
but it
tire
looks
marks.
like tire tracks.
There's a license
Yeah,
plate
right.
stuck in the front of my box.
I once saw on
That's
a
designer
highway.
stock.
Oh, there you go. There you go. I once saw on a highway a mattress get lifted off of a pickup truck, and it must have went maybe like 50 feet in the air. Like it flew up, and Casey and I were in the car driving, and we were watching because that shit flew far
And
as
it
hell.
just went
That
up.
went straight up, just flew like a kite, and then landed like I don't know how many few lanes over, but I can see flowers flying around.
Mm-mm, that's scary.
I don't know. Final destination.
Yeah, that's what I was
ruined
thinking,
a lot.
yeah.
Exactly.
So how long
That's
were
right.
you selling the flowers out of Baja before you established FBI?
Or or
Baja
until you went to
was-
your next thing.
Or yeah.
Yeah,
What was
no,
next?
Baja was, I did that till 94. Then I opted to, with my partner at the time, we went our separate ways. I started bringing flowers out of Mexico, out of Jalisco. So I was doing two things. I was bringing flowers out of Jalisco, and I was shipping Christmas trees from the Northwest down into Mexico. So we would ship stuff into Culiacan, to Guadalajara, and then to Mexico City. I also, at the time, we would buy the red rose in Mexico at the time was Grand Gala. And this was in the 90s. And the Russians had a real propensity for Grand Gala. So I would buy Mexican Grand Gala roses, and we would ship them off to Moscow as well. So it was kind of like me. It was kind of a one-man show, but it was basically just a trading operation, trading Christmas trees. Although I would have to go to the border and get things across the border, which would usually just grease some palms and
What
deal with the.
what did that cost back then?
It would usually cost, if I had a lot of trucks, like if I had like 10, 12 trucks, it might cost me $200 a truck. But if it was only a few trucks, then it would be $300, $400, $500 a truck.
Oh wow!
And the worst part of it, the Christmas trees, the hardest part of them was transloading them. So you would have the truckers that would haul them from the Pacific Northwest to the border, but they didn't want their trailers or trucks going into Mexico. So we would have to transload them onto a Mexican trailer. And that is manual labor. That is brutal.
And this is a semi full of Christmas trees that aren't on
semi
pallets.
full of loosely, and they're not palletized. They're just loosely stacked Christmas trees
Oh man.
that were loaded by guys that know how to do it. That's all they do. They pack trucks with Christmas trees.
That was
The
efficient.
it's not a closed trailer. They have like
Oh,
big
the ones with
stakes.
the
No,
sides.
these are reefer trucks.
Oh,
These are
reefer
100%
trucks.
reefers.
so
Oh
that
yeah,
was
because they're
tight
going
in there.
into pretty warm areas. So you would have to stack them just right, and invariably you wouldn't. There were always
That's got to be
trees
hard
left
to
over.
load and unload
Unload and
a
unload.
closed
That's a
trailer. Wow.
it was brutal. It was and
Talk
then
about back problems.
physically exhausting, and then the sap you would just be covered in just sticky. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. And then you would get, and it was always right around Thanksgiving, and you would always just get these calls with these angry truckers that were stuck at the border, and you'd have to figure a way to get them unstuck. And I don't miss those days. I do miss.
I love
there were
that they
certain
would
parts
give
that were
you.
fun.
I love that they would give you volume discount. All right, you got 10 trucks, 20 trucks.
Yeah.
We'll hook you up this time.
Yeah. No, that was, it's corruption is an amazingly efficient system.
Yeah.
when it's played properly.
That's right.
Right now we're trying to get permits to put some coolers out at one of our farms, and it's going to take an act of Congress. I mean, it's absolutely insane. And yet, if this were Mexico, I could take care of it in 25 minutes. It would be problem solved. So
they have too many rules, and the inspectors have inspectors who have inspectors. It's
just a nightmare.
crazy how they,
and they just love to say no.
Mm-hmm.
Also, California's got its own. They got their own rules.
California is a whole different ball of wax, and it's rather unpleasant. It's how do you stop projects? They're experts at it. There's so much more we could do if not for bureaucracy.
A lot of red tape out there.
Yeah,
no,
there's always a red tape, and that's the beauty of the Mexico situation, is that you could always,
Yeah.
unless you didn't happen to have what you needed on you at the time to get out of trouble. And one time, this was probably 90 or 91. It was an Easter weekend. I was down in Rosarito with a buddy, and we were down there. It was spring break, so we were down there partying and having a good time, and not really even getting carried away. But I had lost my wallet earlier in the day, and we're walking around. I had a beer, and this fight breaks out, and buddy and I go to kind of watch a fight. Why not? And about 10 cops showed up, and they each grabbed somebody. I happened to be one of those that was grabbed, and I didn't have any money to pay to get out. So I ended up almost 3 days in Mexican jail simply because I didn't have the $20 that would have taken me to get out of going to Mexican jail. So,
plus your ID.
you know.
Like, what about all your information? You didn't have any of
None
that,
of
right?
that matters. You
I had
went to
nothing.
a
They
Mexican
don't care.
jail.
They're not. They don't care about your ID.
Oh my god.
They cared that they did care the fact that I spoke Spanish and therefore was an excellent prison translating service. So I think they kept me a little bit longer simply for that very reason. They're like, hey, this guy's useful to us. Let's just
You're
keep
gonna
him.
work this off. When you're not breaking rocks, you're gonna translate for us.
That's how you got in the FBI.
That's it. Yeah. No, that, in fact, but you mentioned the loss of the ID, and as we all know, I think this is a universal bit of suffering. Anybody that has to go to the DMV to get an ID or to do anything, it's just the worst experience in the world, right? So I had to go and get my license replaced at the DMV, and not 3 or 4 or 5 months later, this is back still during the days when we were doing all the stock and stuff out of Baja, and we had this little warehouse right near the beach. It was right across from the 101, so it was, it would take me 5 minutes to walk over to the beach and be on the water surfing. But it was off this little dirt road, and it was kind of isolated back there. And I guess word had gotten out, amongst people that shouldn't have gotten out, that we did some business in cash, and therefore we probably had cash in the building. And one day I'm in the office, and I hear this guy walking in behind me, and I thought it was the Wilsie Bennett driver, a guy named Alex, this Nicaraguan guy named Alex. And Alex and I used to box a lot, and we'd always mess around, and I just wasn't going to give Alex the time of day, so I didn't turn around to acknowledge him. Then all of a sudden I kind of feel this clunk in the back of my head. It was a pretty solid hit, and I was like, Alex, that's going a little too far, but maybe I'm going to keep ignoring him. And then I feel this sharp jab in my ribs, and I'm like, dude, what are you doing here? So again, not going to acknowledge Alex. Finally, after probably a couple minutes later, I see a guy come around, and he grabs my phone line, and he takes a knife and he just cuts it right through. And I was like, all right, Alex, now you've gone too far. And so I spin around. I'm in my chair, in my office chair, and I spin around, and there's these two guys standing there. One's got a double-barreled 12 gauge sawed off about 14 inches long, and the other guy's got this knife. And you could tell from their accents that they were Nicaraguan. And this was around the time of the Contras and all the bad stuff that was going on down there. And I just kind of put my hands out. I'm like, well, here I am. I'm sitting in a chair, and you've got a double-barrel 12 gauge pointing at me, and what do you want? And they're like, where's the money? There was some money, but I didn't think that it was really going to make a difference in whether they shot me or not. So I just played dumb. I said, I don't know what you're talking about, the money. And they said, we hear you've got money. And I kind of held them off for a bit. And as we're talking, I get a fax. They had gone around the office, and they cut all the phone lines, every single one of them. But they cut the receiver lines. They didn't cut the actual lines that gave the phone, their power. And they did it to the fax machine as well. But as they're sitting there and we're talking, a fax comes in. And this was back in the days when the fax machines made a ton of noise. And it would go, bzz, 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 made all the weird noises. And these guys just freaked. They thought I'd tripped an alarm. The guy, he clicks the safety off of his 12 gauge. He takes it from a resting position. He points it right at me. And he's like, you're holding out on us. Now I'm going to kill you. And I'm like, wow, this is it. This is the end. I remember thinking vividly at the time that I was going to block my body and head, and everything was going to block. I was up against a wall, was going to block the pellets, and it was going to leave a silhouette of my body. That's what I was thinking at the time. And I looked at him with this kind of blank look like, wow, this is it, so what's next? And I didn't freak out. I didn't beg for my life. I didn't do anything. I just looked at him. And he kind of hesitated for a second. When he hesitated, I said, look, that machine that you're freaking out about, that's a fax machine. I said, and if you wait another 15 seconds, a piece of paper is going to come out of there. And the reason that this machine still works is because you cut the wrong line. You cut the receiver line. You didn't cut the phone line itself. And the reason I don't have any money here is because we make deposits of cash so that we don't have money around for people like you to come and steal from me. I'm sorry, but that's the reality. And the guy looks at his buddy and they're looking at each other like, wow, I guess we're kind of screwed on this deal. But it made perfect sense to them. At that very moment, the cooler door opens up and this guy worked for us, Hector. He comes out of the cooler and he's checking inventory. So he's got this clipboard and he's kind of looking at his clipboard like, yeah. And this guy with a shotgun runs out, sticks the gun at him, and Hector looks at his clipboard and then he looks up and looks back down and he's like, oh shit, that guy's got a shotgun. And they hustled Hector back into the office with me. And as we're standing there, they take Hector's wallet and he's got like $80 on him. I'm thinking, I know they're going to come for my wallet next. I don't have any money, but I just went to the DMV to get my license, and I'll be goddamn if I'm going back to the DMV. And so I take my wallet out of my pocket and real subtly and toss it under my desk. And so now I don't have a wallet because I was not risking losing a wallet so that I'd have to make another trip to that DMV for these guys.
It's your life with a license.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome.
Yeah. And then the guys, they ran out, they took off, and they got nothing but $80 and a pair of Ray-Ban sunglasses. And I went over to a buddy's house to go surfing afterwards. And as I was walking through his yard, I stepped on a nail that went through my foot, out the top, in the bottom, out the top. Ooh. And but then when we got to the water, these were perfect. The pelicans were surfing. There were porpoises. It was my day of trial was over. Life was good again.
You still went surfing after the nail?
He needed to go.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Gotta go. Yeah. Had to do it.
Well, that probably helped make sure you didn't get infected.
Yeah. But that's
saltwater cures everything.
That's my lost ID story.
Wow.
Shit.
So from there, what happened
flowers.
in your transition from that business to the next?
After that, when I started doing the Christmas trees, the flowers out of Mexico, I actually moved from California to Dallas, where my girlfriend, now wife, was, because she was fixing to move to California. And I said, hey, I'm leaving this partnership, so you've got a good job. Why don't you keep your job? I'll move to Dallas and we'll see what happens there. So all the flowers I was flying on American Airlines out of Guadalajara into Dallas, and I would sell them to all the locals in Dallas, but also put stuff on planes. And the Christmas trees I handled out of Dallas, and the Mexican roses to Moscow I handled out of Dallas. And then the guys with the stock and the larkspur, the seed guys, they called me and they said, hey, it's not going so well in your absence. Would you mind coming back? And, is there a way you can handle, start selling our stuff again? So I came back and worked out of a friend's warehouse. I don't know if you remember Robert Hall. That was a big grower in California. They grew pom-poms primarily, and then they got into potted plants. So I would bring the stock and the larkspur there, and we shipped it out of there. And then I decided it's time to move back to California, and that would have been 96 or so. I got married right before I came back. In fact, my wife, when we got married in Pennsylvania on the lake where we'd always ski, I drove from the wedding back to California. So from central Pennsylvania, I drove back to California. She went back to Dallas and worked for another 3 months to get her stock options and her bonus, and then came back out to California. So that's when we started FBI, or I started FBI, and that just started little by little, it started out with the stock and that stuff. And then we started growing more in Mexico. I got greenhouses, so we moved into Gerberas and Matsumoto's, and we did gladiolas, did lilies. But it's difficult down there with the water situation, the salinity, the EC of the water gets so high that unless it's a crop that's particularly strong with less than ideal water, it doesn't work great. So Gerberas, for instance, they work pretty well. You have to have a lot of money to invest in reverse osmosis, and then if you do that, you have to have a place to dispose of your wastewater from the reverse osmosis. So we were all about Mexico until 2008. We started getting the downturn in the economy, and I closed up the farms in Mexico, moved out completely. It was also partly because the business model would change. To do Mexico, you need to bring in at least a semi a day of flowers, because you really can't hold them there because they don't, the perishable nature of the flowers means that you've got to move them rather quickly. So we would cut a truck a day and we would bring a truck a day. And if you ever get behind that truck in terms of your inventory, then you're in a bad way. And so we'd have, big customers that would be buying big numbers until their bouquet recipe would change, at which time they would stop maybe for a week or whatever it was. And then you'd end up having to be dumping stuff. And larkspur is particularly interesting crop because you want tons of it for Valentine's Day, obviously, right? But it doesn't germinate until the soil temperatures drop below, I don't call the number, but it's, you got to get past that summer heat. And that first morning when you wake up and you kind of feel a chill in the air, that's when you knew you could plant your larkspur. When the things were starting to cool down, larkspur would then germinate, and you would have to plant a lot of it because it would come in for Valentine's Day. It's on a very gently sloped curve that it would start here, your production goes up and down, and you might get 25% of your crop out by Valentine's Day. And then after Valentine's Day, it keeps increasing and increasing and increasing. In the meantime, you've been able to satisfy a certain amount of demand, but not develop a big enough market to move those big numbers. So right after the Valentine's rush was over and everybody's now in the post-Valentine's, don't bother me, I don't need any flowers mode.
The hangover.
You are ending up with a whole lot more than you had before.
Yeah.
So it was always quite stressful. And that'd always be the week that I'd want to go skiing, but I'd be skiing and getting notes of, hey, we got these trucks and what are we going to do with all this stuff? It'd be like, same thing we did last year. Try to sell it whatever price you can get. And at some point, just start disking it under at the farm.
Fern, you know what his idea of skiing is?
What?
He goes on a helicopter to the top of some mountain
Extreme,
that's never
yeah.
been skied. And he gets off the helicopter and skis down the giant mountain that with
Again, he wasn't worried that they were gonna take his life. He wasn't scared.
No, he's a
man of the edge, living on the edge.
Adrenaline junkie for
So
sure.
the first time I met Frank, we were up on his farm on beautiful mountain he has, and we're up there and he's showing us around. We're on top of this mountain and there's like this rock that sticks out of the mountain, kind of.
Mm-hmm.
All the waxflower grows like on the side of a mountain. How these guys harvest it is unreal.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how they do it. And when people tell me that the wax is too expensive, it's like, dude, do you know what the fuck they have to do to get that waxflower, man? You wouldn't do it ever. You wouldn't do it. As is, whatever they're charging you should pay it because a lot of hard work and people risk their lives to cut that shit. But Frank is explaining us everything, right? And then he just walks out onto this rock sticking out of the side
on the ledge.
Yeah, and I'm like, whoa, this is not good. Come back in here, Frank.
Come closer.
It was like
were
he did it every day, totally fearless with zero. I was like, oh man, this guy is badass.
No
I
fear.
can't believe. I'll let him finish, but I had to say that was amazing. How you Just
The guys, I'll tell you, you mentioned the guys picking the wax. Those guys are men among men.
for
It's
sure.
the only thing tougher than picking wax is picking avocados.
Mm.
And
You said
because
that.
we grow avocados as well, and it's the same guys. But for the skiers in the listening crowd, a lot of our hills that we're cutting the wax on are like double black diamond steep. They're
steep.
really steep.
They're straight,
and
almost
loose
straight
road.
down.
And in the spring, you got lots of rattlesnakes out there. We've never had anybody bitten, never. And snakes, they don't want anything to do with biting people. They really don't, because if they can't eat you, they don't want to bite you because it's just a waste of their venom. But to be able to then pick all the wax, you pick it and you kind of consolidate it in a spot on the hill, and then they tie them together in bundles, typically around 40 bunches, carry them up the hill. And most people would have a real hard time walking up this hill at all without 40 bunches of wax on your back.
I was having a rough time. I was huffing and puffing on air for sure.
These guys are Iron Men. And when they're picking avocados, depending on how well maintained the grove is, if the trees are tight, avocados are always looking for sun. So they start out, they go wide until they bang up against each other, and then they go up. There'll be trees that'll be 40 feet high, and the fruit tends to produce mostly in the areas where there's most sun. So in this case, it would be on the high part of the tree. So you have guys that are going on these hills, same type of hills, same double black diamond hills, with a 30-foot ladder, and it'll be an extension ladder.
No.
And
all my fears are here.
It'd be a 15, and they extend it up to the 30-foot range. They find a spot where they have these little sharp feet on the ladder, so it digs into the dirt, and they'll put it up against what appears to be hopefully a strong branch. They go up the tree, and they have a 14-foot pole picker with a basket on the end. So they're reaching out with this pole going out 14 feet and picking fruit. And they usually don't bring that pole back to them until they've got 6 pieces of fruit in there, or 8, which makes it pretty heavy. And they carry this big sack over that'll come around behind their neck and be on their chest. And they will dump all the fruit into this sack. And typically, if they're piece workers, which most of them are, my guys are hourly workers, but most are piece workers. They get paid by the bin, and a bin's about 950 pounds. They won't come off that ladder until they have about 80 pounds of fruit in that bag that's hanging off their neck and on their chest.
Imagine the balance, how hard you have to, they have core super strong core muscles.
I couldn't do it.
They're
I couldn't do
off
it.
the ground, and they're on the side of a super steep hill. So if you fell, you would fall 30 feet, and then you would bounce down another, I don't know, until you hit a tree that would stop the rest of your fall. But and then once they get to the bottom of the ladder, then you got to walk up or down the hill to where you have the bins, and they're men among men. These guys are tough hombres.
For sure.
You mentioned rattlesnakes. Your son was showing me the belt he made with one of the rattlesnakes from the from the farm.
Yeah, no, he made that little hat rim belt.
That's what it was.
And he's got another good skin that he's thinking to make another belt out of. That's still coming. I'm the guy that's always trying to spare and save the rattlesnakes, and my wishes of peace with rattlesnakes falls on deaf ears with all my guys. But if I come across one, I came across one on, well, it wasn't a rattler, it was a gopher snake on Saturday. They know to leave the gopher snakes alone, but I always get the snakes to safety somewhere where they're at least temporarily going to buy them some time.
Nice.
Some of them you can tell they mean business, and they're out to, you don't mess with them. But very often, even the rattlesnakes, they don't coil up and go for you. They very often just either laying out and sunning, or they're just trying to get across, why the rattlesnake cross the road to get to the other side.
But they also, don't they help with like avocados and stuff with the pests? Like, aren't they going to they're necessary.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you think of a rattlesnake as kind of this dangerous beast, a sort of a predator, for lack of a different word. But they are prey to so many animals up there. The hawks eat them. The road runners eat them.
Oh, wow.
The coyote?
Road runners,
bobcats
real
eat
animals?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, they don't go.
Yeah.
I
They
thought
kind
it
of
was.
make a
I
clicking
didn't know it was a real.
Yeah.
I thought it was
I
an
love
Acme
roadrunners.
Looney
They're
Tunes
cool.
thing.
Doesn't
No,
look like one
it's
either.
real.
They're smaller than the cartoon.
Yeah,
They're
way
Yeah, a lot
smaller.
smaller.
Yeah, they don't go
funny.
meep. They click. They like. Yeah, it's a kind of a cool sound. I've been surrounded by them before, where they would like making these clicking sounds all around me. They do run. They'd rather run than fly, but they'll fly as well as a last resort. But they prefer running.
So Frank,
But
at what point was Tradewinds born?
Tradewinds was
FBI.
95. Tradewinds was 95, and it really came about because at the time, as you guys know well, Miami in its early stages, which go well before 95, obviously, but even to 95, it was mostly consignment deals between farms and brokers in Miami. And that much of the business model for South American farms is predicated more on the depreciation of the Colombian peso than on profitably growing and selling flowers. And as a buyer of flowers, a wholesaler, you would you'd be buying somebody's inventory out of Miami that was consigned, and who knows how old the stuff had been, and dubious post-harvest practices at farm and cold chain and everything else, kind of wild days of the business. So we started Tradewinds on the premise that it would be a way for farms to go direct to wholesale buyers and a way for the wholesale buyers to go direct to a farm, and with fixed pricing on both sides. So it was a more of a guaranteed return that the farms were getting.
So was it from South America specifically that was born
Yeah,
out
yeah.
of, or
It was Bogota.
California?
It was South America. So it was Bogota, Medellin, and Quito.
How did that sit
And-
with the grower community in California at the time?
Oh, the grower counter. I don't know that they really knew much about it or even cared too much about it. The grower community in California, obviously, throughout the years had our issues and our struggles, but I've always been of the opinion that a rising tide lifts all ships, and that we as Californians need South America. We're not going to be growing the roses and the carns and the palms and everything else that you really need to be able to put our wax flower with, and our proteas with, and our eucalyptus and everything else that we grow. They're at the end of the day, they tend to be complementary items to the focals that are coming out of. There are those in California that would argue that South America's the evil empire, so to speak.
I've been
But I
hearing
don't
less and less
believe
of
that
that,
it's-
though.
No.
I think that
No,
it's still there.
At Fun and Son, I was
Really?
filling in for Casey, right? They were having the baby. He couldn't go.
Yeah.
So I says, okay, we'll go out there. Ryan was speaking, so I wanted to hear that too. I was like, okay, I'll go. And we're at this cocktail hour, and Lane is there. And I went, I gave Lane a big hug, and we started talking, and this dude comes up to me. Big guy, scary looking guy. And he looks at Lane, he's talking, he just interrupts us. I guess he was hammered, I'm not sure. And he just interrupts our conversation, and he looks at my badge, and he goes, Miami. You fucking guys got to raise your prices.
Yeah.
And I said, gee, thanks for the warm welcome.
I've been out of it for a while. But,
I thought that was over, but it ain't
I
over.
thought it was over. Well, not over. I mean, you're never gonna have it
That's-
over.
That's why I asked you, because I was feeling
You do hear less about it.
I thought, I would
you
say
do
less.
hear less about
because
it.
there's less of them.
That's true.
Correct. There's less
It's-
people.
Yeah,
in
there's
California.
obviously less.
Yeah.
There's less, and there's less direct competition, and there's a whole lot more people out here that are kind of a hybrid, doing
Yeah.
domestic product as well as imported product, and then
Yeah.
other people that are just doing straight up imports.
Yeah.
And you really need, as a proud member and board member at Cal Flowers and a participant in that flower feeling, that we need the industry to get behind promotional efforts to, again, rise the tide for all ships in the industry. And then
Absolutely.
we can't be fighting. We can't be trying to demonize one component of the industry. We need flowers to be universally recognized as inherently good.
Agreed.
And that more Americans enjoying more flowers more often in our benefit. And if we're kind of fighting amongst ourselves and we're trying to make one side the good guy and one side the bad guy, well, for the consumer, it's going to be confusing. And they're going to say, I don't remember which one's good and which one's bad, but I'm just going to avoid them all because I don't want to get the bad guy stuff.
Right.
It's kind of like blood diamond. There is no such thing. And you guys know well that the way things are done right now at the farm level in Medellin or Bogota or in Quito, it's amazing how well things are done, both from an environmental stewardship perspective as well as from a social perspective. So many farms are doing their own schools and providing dental and health care for people. And it's the rumors of coming in and lining up pregnant women and children and spraying them with agricultural chemicals couldn't be further from the truth. They really are good stewards of the people, of the environment, of the water, and producing great product now. And
I think the newer generations of leaders of these farms are bringing that to the forefront. I think that the old way of doing things wasn't like that so much. I think that it's improving a lot over the years, especially with marketing is incorporated into it and showing your company in a good light to the world.
And it's similar to here in that, in the post-COVID world where labor at all parts of the economy became such a big issue and finding people that would work, it's not dissimilar to down there. And that, regulations are one thing, but the fact that it's a free world and a free market and people can leave and go find a different job, they really have to treat people well down there. You find that especially in Colombia, where the economy is so much more diversified and there's so many other jobs beyond agriculture.
There's a lot of sit-down jobs, a lot of factory jobs.
A lot of factory stuff that people could take, and they're competing against those jobs. So you've got to really treat people well to keep them coming back and planting and harvesting and packing and shipping flowers.
A lot of times the mom and the dad, they bust their ass on their hands and knees growing flowers so they can give their children a better life. So
Correct.
they're not having to take on those jobs. So there's less
some of the bigger
generation.
farms. Some of the bigger farms that have schools, special schools that are frankly superior to what they get in the public school. And so the parents are working these hard, difficult farming jobs, and the kids are getting a better education. And that kid might grow up and be an engineer or who knows what. But it's the flower business helped them get that step up.
Frank, what do you think would be the state of, looking at today's inflation, what everything cost, what do you think would be the state of the floral industry if we had never started importing or growing in South America?
I don't think, flowers wouldn't be in the mass market because there wouldn't be enough flowers. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how, you can only pay so much for a lily or a rose or a palm or whatever it is that we can grow here in California that would dissuade somebody from selling their property for millions of dollars to grow beachside condominiums. Because again, in California, except for the wax and the ukes and the stuff that we grow, which we can grow inland about 20 miles, to grow flowers here, the primary, the focals, you need to have that coastal climate. And the coastal climate is just too valuable for other uses. So there's no way that flowers were going to keep growing here. We mentioned Robert Hall as an example, and they had a beautiful property with a bunch of greenhouses for growing pom-poms. They switched over to potted plants later, but it is now part of it's a hospital and part of it is a big park for town of Encinitas, and they sold it for a pretty penny. So invariably that land was too valuable to ever be flowers long term.
Was that Bay City? Was that
No, it was called Robert Hall Inc. Bay HM Flowers. They were I don't know exactly the details, but they were at one point they were kind of partners with the Manatee group out of Florida that grew up gladiolas.
They got a lot of nice coastal land over there too.
That's all been sold for development. It's all been sold. Condos going up and all that over there in Florida.
And leveled by hurricane after hurricane.
Yeah, one after the other.
You know, Mike, you mentioned running into Lane at the, I think it was at that flower feeling cocktail party.
Yeah.
And I have to say, it was really nice to see Lane there, because obviously it was in a difficult time for him.
Yes.
For having, you know, the business having literally, you know, a week or two before closed down, one of the preeminent best California flower operations in history. And I was glad to see him there, and I was glad he wasn't hanging his head
Yes.
in shame, but rather coming out and being celebrated for what he had done for the industry over those years. And, you know, there's a big loss for the community of Arcata. I think he was the largest employer in the community of Arcata.
Yes.
You talk about the coastal property and the values and how it's difficult to grow flowers. That was one area where you could actually still kind of do it, but it was so far north that it wasn't really within the realm of the logistics system. So granted, everything's expensive to do in California, but then when you add in an extra layer of logistics that his Arcata operation had that the rest of California doesn't really have, was just an extra kick in the gut. I mean, there was a lot of things that went into the downfall of Sun Valley, but I think at the end of the day, we need to look back and celebrate what he did and what he accomplished.
Absolutely. He's one of my flower heroes. You know, I only knew him. I knew of him my whole career, but only really knew him just for 3-4 years. And in our second year of knowing each other, he allowed us to become his distributor in Miami. And it was a really big deal for us. And traveling there with my sons, because I try to visit everybody we do business with at least once. You know, Frank, you walked 100,000 farms in your life. And you know when you're walking a farm with an owner, as like when we walked your farm with you, you can tell if they're in it just for money or if they're in it for business and sport. And you could tell when Lane walked his farm and when he walked you through his farm and he showed you all the things that he showed you. It's like I always say, like you walk a farm in South America maybe, and with the owner, and the owner's just like walking through, and he's got like this sweater tied around his neck, and he's just like walking through. He's walking through, and he's just like, you know, doesn't even acknowledge the people around him. It's just all about him, and he's or her, and they're showing you their farm, and they're walking you through. You're a customer, and the only time he or she ever goes to that farm is pretty much for that reason. And then there are those growers who walk around or drive through with, like Frank had, you know, with a pair of clippers, and you know, you go
some gloves, and they know.
Yeah, and you see something wrong, and you kind of stop and you fix it. You really don't give a shit if your customers see it or not, because that's what you do, and that's how he was or is, and that's what always impressed me, and that made me want to work hard to be in a good place with Sun Valley, Jet Fresh speaking, not me personally, but Jet Fresh. For us to represent them right. And for the short term that we work with them, I think we did that. But, you know, I have failed in business. And I will tell you, him showing up there, it takes a strong man. It takes somebody, because even though you really have no reason to be ashamed or you really have no reason to
it's hard to face that.
This industry is fucking cruel to people, and it's unforgiving.
We're an emotional industry.
You're as good as your last deal in our business.
Yeah, pretty much.
When you fail in business, you know, you're not only failing on your workers or your family, but you're also failing on your growers and your people that, you know, they're affected by you. And a lot of times just you have all the best intentions. Not many of us, Frank, went to the Wharton School of Business, right? You know, a lot of us are just self-taught. I was saying this yesterday to a young lady I was talking to, like, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. I'm learning every day something new. Every day is a new challenge for me. I've never been in the position I'm in right now. And it's, Frank, I'm sure you know too, it's every day you got to learn how to do it and how to do it right. And that failure, for me personally, was the best education I ever got. But it was also the hardest time in my life. And I can't imagine how hard it was for Lane, because he did it twice as long as I did. And he built a a brand that people would recognize. Doesn't matter where you are in this world, you knew what that logo, you knew that brand, and that ain't easy to do.
And it's kind of a microcosm of the industry, how we are so interrelated and interdependent, in particular in California, where, out of Miami, you've got significant economies of scale in terms of the transportation, and you're competing less from a transportation outbound perspective. In California, because we're the bread basket, or not the bread basket, but the fruit and the vegetable basket of the United States, the demand for outbound trucks from California for produce and fruit is extensive. So it makes the cost of outbound trucks inherently higher. And then if you add to that the fact that flowers are a diminishing volume commodity, then it's, we have to find, we can't lose guys like Sun Valley, that we all, maybe we're competing against one another in one way or another. But at the end of the day, we as Californians need to produce cubic feet of shipments to go out of the state, so that the transportation companies, the Primes, the Armalinis, the Florida Beauties of the world keep that interest in continuing to serve markets from California. And losing Sun Valley was a blow to everybody.
It's a huge hit to the trucking industry out there.
Exactly. So we're all in this to one degree or another. We're in it together, and we can compete against each other, but we want each other to do a good job, because if I or one of my competitors is putting inferior product into a market and the consumer ends up having a bad experience with flowers, then that harms everybody downstream.
Yeah, it does.
So we all have to work together to make sure that we're doing as well as we can, and try to support one another in that regard.
Yeah, the podcast went dark.
I just
real.
Well, okay, let's talk about something good. So, how long have you been doing the expo that you do with Tradewinds? Like when you have everybody.
Our biannual show.
Yeah. Oh,
we've been doing that. It's every other year.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't even tell you when the first one was.
I want
but
to
it was
say,
in the 90s.
Oh wow.
It's been a long time, and we've had some interesting, fun ones. And I think that show we do is kind of a snapshot of the flower business.
Yeah.
I have to say that most of a lot of my best friends in this world are flower guys, and a lot of those guys in particular they're from everywhere, but in particular out of South America. So when we get together, it's a hoot. It's a big party, and it's fun, and everybody comes ready to do business, but ready to party and have fun. It's
getting bigger and bigger every year.
Yeah. And some of the smaller ones that, like, we've done them in Montana. We did them one year on a cruise ship. It's always enjoyed by all. This last one was in Austin, Texas.
I saw the video in the bar where everyone was line dancing.
Yeah, that's for us. We really, as Tradewinds, we created a company that tries to be as much a family of customers, and we're always striving for the win-win. We want everybody in this business to win, and that means being fair and recognizing that business always has some level of a compromise. And whether that's a farm maybe giving a little bit of a break on a price when the commodity of free spirit right now might be through the roof, but this guy really needs it, and cut him a break, get him, but at the same time, the farm needs to move some freedom. So help the farm out, just mutual back scratching.
Mm-hmm.
And when you get these,
that's not common. That's uncommon. That's really great, because that's uncommon.
And so much of it comes around the fact that you've sat around and emptied a couple bottles of aguardiente with somebody, right?
Right. Yes.
And has some funny tales to tell of it. And there's stories that derived from our shows that are still told. And I wasn't able to go to the IFPA show in Atlanta recently, but I sent this girl who works for us, and she's Casey is new to the business, but she's great attitude and she really kind of gets the whole, I told her, I said, when you get in the flower business, it's good luck getting out because you get in and you stay.
Yeah.
And she came back from the keto show and she's like, oh, I totally get this. And she went to the IFPA show and she's like, oh my God, people are telling me all these stories about you and telling me these stories about our Tradewinds shows and things that have happened there and things they've done. And, these are 20 years ago that they're still telling the tales of. And it's, I think to me, business is obviously you've got to make a profit, but material things have never been all that important to me. I like to make money. I like to be able to, like you say, go heli skiing and do other things that aren't exactly cheap, but I don't need to drive a nice car and I don't need all these other things. But if you do good business, and again, you strive to help people get win-win-win across the board, then you're going to do well in the long term because, you're just not in it for yourself.
Yep. That's right.
There's a guy who just walked in here. I had to mute and tell him I was on a podcast. Very good customers of ours are Dylan Floral up in Bloomsburg. And they have a customer that does.
I met Tony at that house.
Up at our place?
Yeah.
So they've got this customer that he's from Allentown, Pennsylvania. And he's in San Diego this week because we have the Breeders' Cup. And I'm not a big horse race guy, but apparently the Breeders' Cup is the big horse race. It's bigger than the Kentucky Derby. It's bigger than them all. And so he's doing the flowers for it. So if he's a friend and a customer of Tony's, then he's a friend and a customer of mine. I'm going to help this guy out. So we got him all the flowers he needed. I allow him here in my warehouse unfettered access to do the flowers, and he's going to take them to the Breeders' Cup. And he seems like a great guy. A hockey fan, so we've got things to talk about. So it's funny. You meet people and you enrich your life by adding yet another friend to your list. I think that's always been my philosophy. Try to go through life and add another friend or two as the days go by.
Were you a youth hockey player?
Yeah, I played hockey as a kid, and I played it until relatively recently in the old man beer leagues here in San Diego. I have to say, old man beer hockey is probably the funnest hockey.
You played a season on the Puckin' Nuts, no? With mom and the other
your mother
parents?
played.
I thought you got.
My wife and I don't sit next to each other at any of our kids' sporting events because she becomes another person.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
She's the sports parent.
Yeah,
she's
over the top.
She was the team mom for every football team. She's the
she
loudest.
Got red cards in soccer games.
Yeah, she's the only one that got a red card at a 6-year-old soccer game. Yeah.
I got kicked out of a kid's soccer game once. It was very funny. It was George's game. He was pretty good. He played into college. So this was, I don't know, he was probably 14 or 15. And I was the mellow parent. I was the parent that would sit on the sidelines and just kind of watch. And I loved the coach. It was this Englishman that had played 18 years in the English Premier League. And he did the commentating for Fox Sports Soccer. Warren Barton's his name. Great guy. And he was so funny. And his comments to the kids, half the time they didn't get it, but I did. So I would just kind of want to sit around and listen to him. But one game I came in really late and I was on the sidelines and at the other team's parents, and I was talking to the other team's parents. And there was this one linesman. So there was two guys that were the officials, and this one linesman who was obese, and he couldn't keep up with the play. He should have been another fat guy in your podcast, but he was fatter than the two of you guys. He was fatter than both of you guys combined. And he's making no effort to keep up with the play. And as a linesman, right, you got to stay in line with the defender to see what's offside.
Right.
And, he totally missed this one call really badly. I said, hey, buddy, you missed one there. And he's like, you shut up. And I looked at him and I said, hey, keep your eyes on the ball here. And I switched over to Spanish and I said, I know guys like you. I said, you're not here to be a linesman. You could care less about this job. You're here to take a check. You just want your money and you're going to go home. And the fact that you did nothing for it, that you made no effort to do a good job is irrelevant to you. But to all these parents here on the sideline, it's quite relevant. So at that point, he kind of went back and forth, and I might have said something a little less civil than that at some point or another. But for the most part, I was pretty nice. And he calls the ref over. And of course, I know I'm going to get kicked out at this point. So I just walk away. And he tells the ref what had gone down. And of course, this is all in Spanish. The ref is now targeting the other team, saying that they're going to maybe forfeit the game because one of their parents had berated this linesman. They're like, we have no idea who that guy is. He just came up and was talking to us. He seemed like a nice enough guy, but he's gone. Long story short, nobody ever figured out it was me. And I just walked away. And but it was, I've had my moment. I was always the mellow parent, except for that one time where I did get kicked out of youth soccer. Hockey parents.
Casey
are the
played
worst.
competitive soccer here in Florida, and he was the only non-Spanish speaking kid on the team. So Casey was a sweeper, right? He was a sweeper, and he wasn't the fastest, so he played a little dirty. And the coach started yelling at Casey, and the kids would translate for Casey. And at the end of the day, the kids were fucking around with Casey, telling him the complete opposite of what the coach was saying. He was a ref. I think he got like $40 a game reffing hockey.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
No. So this guy that, he was making decent money for doing nothing. And I just said, I know your type. I said, I've had people just like you work for me, and they didn't work, and they didn't stay around very long. So if you were at my place, you'd be fired. And, it was that type of banter. And that's what got the guys goat a little bit. But I doubt it changed his style of officiating.
Yeah. At all. Never a fun thing.
So when Connor, my youngest, he was playing travel hockey, I don't know, maybe he was 13 or 14 years old. My wife and the rest of the hockey moms are all screaming and yelling at everybody during the game. And the coach came over after the game. He says, look, none of you people have any right to be yelling if you don't play yourself. So all these hockey moms got together and they got somebody to teach them. And they all started their little team.
They started a mom's team?
Yes. It was a co-ed team. Ryan played on it too.
I didn't know how to stop the whole first year of me playing. The whole first season, I didn't know how to stop yet. I figured it out as I went.
You didn't know how to stop on the ice?
I had never played hockey, let alone really
shit.
ice skated.
Guy, a soccer guy.
We were all pretty much athletes. We could pretty much get by with whatever sport.
Yeah.
I was fast. I was good. I was pretty aware. I knew what to do. I just didn't have good stick control, and I couldn't stop the first year pretty much. So I hit the wall. I was like that kid in Mighty Ducks.
Yeah.
I just go full speed, miss the shot, and then crash into the wall.
That's hilarious.
Jeff Fresh has an adult team that we sponsor.
It's Dan, because we got all hockey players.
Yeah. Dan Riley, Mike Jr.
We still
Jason.
do. I was at
Pockets was a ref. He would ref 10 games a day.
He doesn't play. He only refs.
Yeah, but I was at the bakery in Vito's, and somebody told me, there's a Jeff Fresh league still, right? I go, I have no idea.
We've been on there.
Hockey's the best game.
I agree.
Okay.
You guys got the Panthers. You got the champion.
Mm-hmm.
We used to get 2 tickets, 2 hot dogs, and 2 sodas for $20.
Yeah, good luck now.
Those days are gone.
Yeah, those days are definitely
You
gone.
can't even get the soda for $20
The
now.
parking,
You were a season ticket holder for
is
a long
like
time.
$50
We were season
there.
ticket holders for a long time.
Yeah.
Well, Connor and Casey were both on the ice crew
Right.
also.
Yeah.
My kid at our local San Diego Gulls games, he had a penchant for finding his way onto the Jumbotron. Now, granted, there's only, maybe 8,000 people in this thing, but he was the crazy 9-year-old kid doing the weird dance that always found his way.
Yeah.
They always found him with the camera.
There you go. Star.
Too funny.
Yeah. I miss my hockey playing days. I wish I could be out there still, but not going to happen now.
I feel like Frank would be the guy that's slamming people. He'd be the enforcer on the
Bass
team.
Brothers.
I wasn't quite big enough. I was the fast guy. I drew the most penalties because people would always end up having to trip me, or they'd hack me, or I was the guy that would take the abuse. I'd let them. You want to do that? You're going to get a penalty, and we're going to be on man up.
Our operations guy, Dan Riley, he's the nicest, sweetest, calmest guy here. Doesn't matter. The building could be falling down. He's always calm and quiet and level-headed, but he also coaches hockey. And there's another Dan.
Yeah, he's got another reputation.
So sometimes the warehouse is a little bit not good, and I'll say, we need Hockey Dan here right now.
Get Hockey Dan.
Bring me
Call Hockey
Hockey
Dan in here.
Hockey
When-
Dan
when-
does not mess around. I saw Dan on the ice. This guy bumped him a couple times, and
He's a
Dan was like, "All right, you're gonna catch an ass whooping."
He's
He
a
throws
goon.
his gloves down.
He's a goon.
His baby. You should see him with the stick.
He's a
He
goon.
was here on Saturday, and I was just shocked. He's a baby.
No, he's a different guy.
Yeah,
when he's
and my-
coaching, when he's playing, it's a different guy. And I think
Hockey Dan.
we need Hockey Dan here a lot because, that would help things move along.
An emergency, break glass.
Yes.
Get Hockey Dan out.
Exactly.
A
Just
puck
press
comes
the
out.
button. Too funny. Oh man, Frank, Ryan's got some questions for you.
Fire away, Ryan.
All right, rapid fire questions. So try not to overthink the answers. In your opinion, what is the best sandwich?
Best sandwich would be a meatball parmesan with provolone on a good roll. It has to have a good roll.
Got a good roll for sure. At the moment, what's your favorite flower?
Favorite flower would be the Free Spirit Rose.
Mine too.
Oh, look at that.
There you go.
Mine too. When we bought the farm, I insisted we planted it, not because it's productive and will make money. It's because I like it the most.
That's it. It's beautiful. And it lasts. It's got a good shelf life.
What is the scariest animal?
Scariest animal would be the honey badger. I'm married to one.
Oh, you got to tell us. Where did the
Give
name
a
come
shit.
from?
Who donned that
That's
name?
the second
Yeah.
one, the honey badger.
Yeah, she's the badger because she, you've seen that video by that guy
Honey
Randall,
badger.
right? Honey
Yes.
badger don't give a shit. Honey
Uh-huh.
badger
Yeah.
take what she wants. That's my wife. She takes what she wants. She has, for those who don't know her, she is 5 foot nothing, 100 pounds, and she has a propensity of getting to yes. That when she's on the prowl and she wants what it is that she wants, she'll get to yes. And that's whether it's dealing with the farms or employees or, somebody at the supermarket or Macy's or whatever. Honey badger,
Frank hasn't said no to her
she don't
yet.
care. She gets what she wants. And that's, I found that my purpose in life is just to keep Badger getting whatever it is that she wants.
It's a
That's
good
amazing.
purpose.
I saw her in
Curious
Ecuador.
animal.
Mm-hmm. Yep, she visited
And you saw her in California up on the
Yeah.
with the
on the
paella
beach
pirate.
property. Yeah.
Okay,
Okay. What's the next question?
Most overrated flower.
Most overrated flower. Boy, I don't know that there is such a thing. I would, I love a peony, but everybody's all about peonies. But I wouldn't say it's overrated. I think it's rated appropriately.
What
I don't-
about
I
what
don't
about
think there is such
underrated?
thing as an- Underrated would be the protea. I think that it doesn't get the recognition that it deserves. It's such an amazing plant that takes so long to get into production, and it's a plant that lives with very little inputs in terms of fertilizers and nutrients, water, etc. It's a tough plant that's used to scrabbling a hard life out of the cliff sides of South Africa, and it creates a beautiful flower.
But the second that somebody who's not in the flower industry sees a protea, they're like, "What?
Yeah.
What is that?" So it does have the wow factor, right? Like it does have that what?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah.
What is your go-to way to relax?
Go-to way to relax is watching hockey.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm really, I really just need to, walking on the farm with my dogs is probably walking or riding my dirt bike on the farm with my dogs is my preferred way. And watching the sunset over the hill at the farm and
Beautiful.
burning dead waxflower plants make really good bonfire material. They shoot flames way up in the air. And so for me, that's the ultimate
Frank's
relaxing, is
dangerous.
hanging out on
Yeah.
the farm.
That's a great way to relax. I like all of that. What if you could have one superpower, what would it be?
I'd love to fly. If I could fly, that would be awesome.
I agree.
Just Superman, just be able to pop up and fly at the speed of sound wherever I wanted to go. That would
When
be
you're
great.
when you're doing the heli skiing, how far is the drop from the helicopter till you hit the mountain?
No, you don't. You land the chopper, and sometimes they might only land one skid if it's a real narrow spot where you're getting out. But they've got to land it because the skis are in a box that's tied to one of the skids. You got to get out. You got to unload your skis, and then the chopper takes off. You kind of hunker down until it's gone, and then you get your skis on and head
I
downhill.
thought you jump out of
I
helicopter
totally
with the
thought you
skis
jumped
on.
out of the
No,
helicopter with the
no.
skis on.
No.
People do
I'm
that, but
picturing
that's-
Tom Cruise and Mission
Yeah, I'm
Impossible over here.
We could just say
Yeah,
that.
but you gotta
We can cut
how
this
you're gonna
part.
get your skis. Like you're not getting in the helicopter with skis on, and then how you're gonna get the skis on the skid. No, it's not. Heli skiing it's awesome because you're making these runs that nobody else has touched. It's not to say that it's necessarily a virgin run, but it is for that particular snowfall. So you're going to ski undisturbed snow, which is the best. And different areas have different types of terrain. I've heli skied in the Canadian Rockies, and it was really good, but it wasn't super, super steep, narrow chutes. And yet then when we skied in Alaska, that's what you get there. So in the Valdez area of Alaska, that's a whole different ball of wax. And it's really, really awesome. You get down to the bottom and you look up and you say, yeah, that was good. I've always wanted to ski Cotopaxi in Ecuador. I've climbed it.
You climbed it?
And it wouldn't be good skiing at all because it's all crusty and it's
ashy ice.
It's ashy. It's got a lot of ash on it. But coming down the hill is really the harder part on your knees. So if you could ski down it and just haul ass, then I could get down that hill in 10 minutes probably.
Shit.
Those volcanoes in Ecuador, they're so beautiful and they're tough to climb. When you live at sea level and you're going and you're climbing up to those elevations. But I don't know how many of them I've climbed, but it's a lot of them, including Chimborazo. Chimborazo is the highest one.
Wow.
It's actually
you went all the way to the summit?
We made it to 100 meters from the summit.
Wow.
And there was this blizzard going on, and there were 4 of us. And the slab, we're walking, and the slab settled. And in other words, it almost slid. We almost had an avalanche, and it would have killed us for sure, 100%.
Wow.
And it didn't. But we had to traverse off of it, get into the rocks, and we chose the wiser choice of not continuing those extra 100 meters to the top and starting to head down into the rocks and find our way back down. Chimborazo was the one. Do you remember there was a story of a jet that had taken off out of Quito Airport and it disappeared and they didn't hear about it and they found it like 25 years later. And it was because a slide had finally uncovered it, but it was on Chimborazo.
Oh, shit.
That's crazy.
Chimborazo is the mountain. It is the point on Earth that is closest to the sun because it's the highest mountain in that range and it's on the equator, so it's closest to the sun.
Oh, wow.
When you take off sometimes, you'll see like way above the clouds, you'll see the
can see you can see the top of it. I saw it. That's pretty cool.
Was it Icarus?
It's all
close to the sun?
Mm-hmm.
There you go. Icarus. Yeah. That's the avenue of the volcanoes, and those volcanoes are just stunning. It doesn't matter how many times you've been there and how many times you've seen them, but they always catch your eye and catch your imagination.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful.
I just love them.
Me too. I haven't climbed any, but I love looking at them.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Oh, yeah.
The
Have you even gone to
the Cotopaxi gives us our water in our farm.
Have you even tried to get up to the refugio at Cotopaxi?
No.
Even that's a bitch. And that's only at like, I don't know what it's at, 12, 13,000 feet or something. When you go up to it, it's not very far from where you park your car, but it's all really loose, volcanic, kind of rocky ash.
Yeah.
And so it's like one step forward, half step back.
Our buyer, Maria Jose, did it recently.
Mm-hmm.
But they only let you up like halfway. They don't let you go all the way up anymore because it's active.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Cotopaxi is the one that is, it's got that classic volcano shape, and it's the one everybody sees and everybody remembers. Some of the other ones are like tougher climbs and more memorable in that. Cotopaxi is just this long slog, just walking up the hill, and it's a long walk up and a long walk.
Yeah, it is. It's super wide.
Yeah, it's
okay. Last 2 questions for you, and then we'll let you out of here. What kind of flowers do you want at your funeral?
Yeah, that's a good question. Whatever people put out, it doesn't matter to me because again, I always go in and I never pick flowers based on what when I got married. we just had a bunch of sunflowers, and that was it. And a roasted pig on a spit, and it was a big party. So I would
a
hope that
hippie
my
party.
funeral,
There you go.
yeah, I hope that my funeral would be similar in that it would just be a big party, and that whatever flowers showed up were going to look great, and they're just a side to the conversation.
And there's a pirate cooking the paella.
That's it. Emilio.
Last question.
That was good, that paella, man. That was the first time I ever had it.
You're not a paella guy? You
Our-
go all the time here.
First time ever had it.
Our fatties have heard more about this paella in the last couple of weeks because we just had Jay Schwenke on, and we also had the paella talk. So yeah, I can't wait for a paella now.
Yep, Jay's a good guy. Jay's doing good things for our industry.
He sure is.
Yep.
Yeah, he had a good episode. Last question. I know you don't drink as much these days, but what was your go-to drunk food back when you were?
When I was a kid and in inebriated state, I would eat like Roy Rogers roast beef sandwiches.
Roy
and, like,
Rogers. Shit, that's a throwback.
Seven
Oh,
of
that's
them.
Mike Jr.
That's
favorite.
Mike Jr.'s classic.
That's
yeah.
Mike Jr. Roy
Yeah.
Rogers.
Yeah, but in Baja, in Mexico, it was always ceviche, tostadas de ceviche with lots of avocado and lots and lots and lots of hot sauce.
That's my
Or
favorite
and
boat
fish
drink,
tacos,
boat food.
Fish
fish tacos and
yeah.
ceviche.
There you go. Love
Those
it.
are the
There you go.
those are
Good
ready to
answers.
go to
Good
Baja.
answers there.
pepper.
Frank,
So,
two more
that's,
questions. Two more questions before we sign off. If someone wants to get in contact with you, maybe they want to talk FBI, maybe they want to talk Tradewinds, maybe they want to talk about Christmas trees and getting sap off in Mexico. How can they reach out to you?
Well, the sap is all about hot water and maybe gasoline.
No.
But,
For our florist, this is coming out near the Christmas time. You can use a leaf shine, whichever one you prefer. But if you spray the leaf shine on your hands, and that will get the sap right off.
Oh yeah, well there you go.
That was
That's
brought to
something
you by
Baby.
Chrysler.
Look
Sponsored
at
by
you.
Yeah, Chrysol. Brought to you by Chrysol.
Sing a little jingle for Mimi's fresh
I
tip.
know,
for,
we need
She
to-
needs like a theme song
Yep.
for her fresh tips.
You
Yep.
can't put
I did.
me on the spot like
Sing a little
that.
jingle. Fresh tips with Mimi.
For-
Hold on, I'm gonna give you
We
a
just-
pitch. I'm gonna give you a pitch for that one.
okay, sing it.
Welcome to Fresh Tips with Mimi.
Perfect.
No.
Where you learn
No,
what
we're
to
gonna-
do with
We got to.
Oh! Where you? I like
alternative uses for all of Chrysol products.
that. For all your baldy guys, you can also spray it on your head. It gets nice and shiny.
There you go.
Willie Armelini, if you're listening.
Oh, we're gonna go.
Mimi
broke
needs
here.
a jingle
I know. Okay, Willie, I'm
for
gonna.
her Chrysler knowledge.
No, not my Chrysler, but just my fun facts. I'll get Willie on.
You could probably take a Chrysol sachet and add a little bit of tart sweetness to your cereal.
You can definitely
She doesn't
add
like
it. You
to
can.
drink
I don't
in
like
public
that.
life.
I don't like them to drink it, but yes, you can. Probably won't do much to you, but straighten up
Yeah.
your scoliosis, maybe.
That's it. That's it. And we'll teach you some exercises for that as well.
I need that. I need
Yeah,
those.
but to find us, like obviously websites are obviously the best. FBIflowers.com and Tradewinds is Tradewinds International. TWI Consol CONSOL.com. There's lots of contact information there, and find us on the web or send us a smoke signal or tie a message to a rattlesnake that I might find and
Too funny.
put one.
Keep saving
Get
those
one on-
rattlesnakes.
That's right. These little rattlesnakes done nobody any harm, especially the little baby
I
ones.
blame the movies.
Yeah, it's the movies' fault.
It's the
Yeah.
movies always put
It's,
them in.
it's the westerns.
Yeah, they made us fear that and quicksand.
Oh my gosh.
All this.
Quicksand is everywhere.
Quicksand.
Can't go to California.
Yeah, quicksand was always like the Lone
Yeah.
Ranger was always pulling
Yeah.
somebody out of quicksand, right?
Oh,
That guy,
man.
what a guy, that Lone Ranger.
What a guy.
And Frank, could you suggest somebody to be a future guest on our podcast?
Oh, who would I suggest to be a future? Well, my son George could be at some
Yep.
point or
Yes.
time or another.
Yes.
Yeah, give him a little more time. He was actually going to participate today, but then he had to run off and do something tomorrow. That'd be an excellent start. I could give you a list of 50 different names.
That's a good place to start.
There's lots and lots of interesting folks in this game.
Thank you, Frank. I really enjoyed this. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Great
no, my
story.
pleasure.
Yeah, it was really
My
awesome.
pleasure.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, it has been an exciting, possibly dangerous, but very informative episode of Two Fat Guys Talking Flowers, where we're always going to give you the good, the bad, the ugly about flowers. Mimi, Ryan, Mike, me, and our awesome guest, Frank Biddle. Thank you guys for listening. Hope you have a great day.